something I did last NFL season that I'd like to continue into this one is a weekly AFC North update after the NFL action. So we'll get right into it. After week 1, we're going to go from division leader to basement dweller. So starting off with the Cleveland Browns, who with a 1-0 overall record and a 1-0 divisional record currently hold first place in the AFC North with their win at home against the Bengals 24-3. Starting with a negative update on offensive tackle Jack Conklin. He is out for the season. He tore both his ACL and MCL. Definitely a career-threatening injury, although he is signed through 2026, which was a contract that was pretty risky given his previous injury history with Cleveland. And right now it's looking like it might not pay off for him if he's unable to return to the field after this injury. But as far as the game itself, it's exactly what Cleveland wanted to do. I did talk about this game more in length in my last video, so I'm not going to get too deep into it. Although I will say Jim Schwartz does seem like the perfect defensive coordinator for the Browns right now. The conditions were perfect for the Browns' advantages in the trenches. It was very rainy and muggy, made it hard for either team's passing game to get going. Both the offensive and defensive line for the Browns were buzzing. Even after Jack Conklin went down, Dwan Jones, he stepped in and looked the part of a starting right tackle, although we'll see how that goes next week when he might be getting a large trial by fire with a matchup against TJ Watt, which I'm personally getting a little nervous for, but I guess we'll get there when we cross that bridge. But the other tackle, Jed Wills, he didn't have his best game in week 1 either. He was probably the worst graded offensive lineman on the Browns. Definitely didn't have a great game against Trey Hendrickson. He got to the quarterback a couple times. Dustin Hopkins on special teams, he made his kicks. Bajorquez still a field-flipping weapon punting the ball. And there's a great coverage team courtesy of special teams coordinator Bubba Ventrone. Guys like Matthew Adams and Mike Ford really helping to solidify the special teams unit. Not sure how much we figured out about the offense for the Browns given the conditions of the game in the rain. We knew that Nick Chubb in the running game would be efficient, and they definitely were, although he took on more of a workhorse back in this game with no Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford fumbling early. Definitely Nick Chubb seeing most of the game action. The passing game was definitely hit or miss. Deshaun Watson not really looking good in the rain. Burrow didn't either, but still, he's still a question mark in a Browns uniform to me. I'm not going to completely write him off yet, but I think it is a bit silly to declare whether or not he's back or anything, because again, we haven't really seen sustained, consistent, great play from Watson. I don't think he's just earned the benefit of the doubt of, oh yeah, it was just the weather, he'll be perfect in week 2, especially because some of the accuracy issues with him underthrowing some people, that was persistent last year when conditions were fine as well. So I guess we'll see how it works out. The Browns' next game is on Monday Night Football on the road against the Steelers, who we'll get to, but we'll see how the Browns can fare in primetime against another division rival. Moving on to the second place Baltimore Ravens. They won 25-9, which is scoregami by the way, at home against the Houston Texans. It was a fairly comfortable game once the second half started, although Houston was able to keep it close in the first and second quarters. Ravens defense not really allowing too much consistent movement from the Texans offense led by CJ Stroud. Stroud had a decent game, but again, he wasn't really working with the best offensive line, and the Ravens defense definitely kept the Texans under wraps. Ravens offense not all that consistent either, but I will say Zay Flowers does seem to be the real deal for them. They definitely needed a good addition at the wide receiver room, and Zay Flowers certainly looks the part right now. And the Ravens offense, to their credit, they did take advantage of their red zone opportunities. And like I said, the defense was solid against a team that they should be solid against, and that's not an insult to the Ravens defense. Part of being a good unit is being dominant over other teams that you should be dominant against. The pass rush especially making CJ Stroud's life pretty difficult. The concern for the Ravens continues to be injuries, as it has been for the past few years, it seems now. J.K. Dobbins tore his Achilles. He's out for the year. There are also some injuries to Marcus Williams, Ronnie Stanley, and Tyler Linderbaum. So we'll see how those three progress. Again, J.K. Dobbins, we already know what the deal with him is. He's out for the year with a torn Achilles, which sucks. I hate seeing that for him, especially with the connection I had with watching him at Ohio State. Just kind of stinks that he's been his career has been marred by injury after injury after injury. So the Ravens are 1-0, but it was a pretty painful victory, and we'll see how they fare on the road next week against Cincinnati, getting their first AFC North game. Moving on to the Steelers, they are 0-1. They haven't played individual games yet like the Ravens. They get walloped at home 30-7 against the 49ers. Probably the worst way to start the season that you could expect for Pittsburgh, as, you know, Pittsburgh and their fan base saw a team that could maybe surprise some people. Maybe some people they thought were sleeping on Pittsburgh a little bit, but in this game, offense was mostly stagnant. Kenny Pickett, probably with one of his worst games in the NFL, threw 2 picks, never really looking that consistent. I'm not really sure how the Steelers organization thought keeping Matt Canada as offensive coordinator would go, but so far it seems like it's a pretty similar return to what we saw last year, which was not good. Outside of TJ Watt, most of the defense looked pretty vulnerable at all times. Brandon Ayuk going off with Brock Purdy back there as quarterback. Christian McCaffrey having a monster game as well. Steelers got themselves into a 20-0 hole in the first half. Looked like maybe they could climb out of it with a scoring touchdown just before halftime. But then early in the third quarter, McCaffrey had a 65-yard touchdown run, and he could have pretty much called the game there. Most of the second half was essentially just played because it had to be. Steelers dealing with injuries as well. Most notably, Cam Hayward's going to miss he's going to miss multiple weeks with a groin injury. There was also Pat Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson, and even more. So they lost the game by a bunch, and they're hurt coming after week one. So they are ice cold with pretty much no momentum heading into their next game on Monday Night Football against Cleveland. As a Browns fan, I'm not going to make any assertions about any Steelers-Browns game. Seeing how that's gone in the past, I know it's getting maybe a little better for the Browns, but again, I'm never going to be overly confident in a Steelers game. But if this Steelers team plays the Browns team that we saw yesterday, it might be another long game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then you get to the Bengals, who are 0-1 and also 0-1 in the division, so that's how they find themselves in the basement after week one. They lose 24-3 on the road against the Browns. Joe Burrow looking pretty rough in the conditions. It also led some to believe that maybe he's still dealing with a little bit of an injury from that calf. He was good enough to play, but was he quite 100%? Who knows? I know the broadcast was constantly cutting to the sideline, and Joe Burrow did seem to be kind of moving his leg maybe a little bit oddly, but no reason to think that he couldn't go in week two. His connections with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase were just a little bit off, in the Cleveland defensive backs not really letting them get too much separation. Chase and Higgins were usually blanketed pretty well. The running game couldn't really get going and then had to be abandoned because Cincinnati was trailing late. There were moments when Cincinnati did remind us that they do have NFL talent. Trey Hendrickson getting to the quarterback a couple of times. Their defense did force a fumble early, kept the Cleveland offense mostly in check in the first half, but in the second half, the Browns did start to consistently move the ball a little bit more. Second half, fourth quarter, in those areas of the game. The defense, so the Bengals defense might deserve some props, but the Bengals offense just could not get anything going. Their next game is at home against the Ravens next week. So the AFC North in general, they're going to be seeing a lot of each other early this season. You have the Browns playing against the three other teams in their first four games. You also have that Ravens-Bengals game that's tomorrow. So while it is impossible to tell who's going to win a division after the first 5 or 6 weeks or so, there are definitely some early season bragging rights up for grabs. So that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you did make this far into it, let me know in the comments what you thought about week 1 in AFC North action down below. Leave a like and a subscribe if you enjoyed it and you'd like to see more like it. I'll see you at the next one.